If only they knew, the frail woman sweeping floors in silence was the mother of the man who owned an entire empire. No one noticed her trembling hands. No one saw the pain hiding behind those tired eyes. To them, she was just the old maid, a nobody. But behind that faded uniform was a story that could break hearts and shatter kingdoms. Every morning, before dawn painted the sky, she walked through the long marble hallway, barefoot. Her steps were soft, humble, like someone afraid of leaving a trace in a world that once belonged to her. The portraits on the wall watched her, smiling faces of people who called her Maid. She once held those faces as babies. Now they looked down at her like a stranger. Her name was Evelyn Grace. Once, she was a heartbeat of the Grace family. Now, she was their shadow. Hidden, forgotten, buried alive in guilt and silence. Years ago, she had everything. A loving husband, a son who adored her, and a mansion filled with laughter and music. But life has a cruel way of turning gold into dust. One betrayal, one signature, one lie whispered by those she trusted most. And everything she built crumbled overnight. They called her mad. They said she was unfit. And when her son, her only child, was taken from her, she didn't fight back. She just wept quietly, because she believed the truth always finds its way home. But sometimes the truth takes too long. Now, decades later, the boy she lost had become a billionaire, Alexander Grace, a man praised by the world, powerful, ruthless, and adored by millions. He built skyscrapers that kissed the clouds. He ruled industries with an iron heart, but he never knew the woman mopping the marble beneath his feet was the reason he was born. Evelyn kept her secret buried. She worked without complaint, wiping away tears before they touched the floor. Every night, she would stand by the grand piano, the same one she once played lullabies on, and whisper softly, "Do you still remember my boy?" Her voice trembled, her hands shook, but her hope never died. One morning, the mansion was alive with excitement. Alexander was returning from a long business trip. Servants rushed, chefs shouted, chandeliers glowed. Evelyn stayed in the corner, dusting the same vase she'd polished for years. Her heart pounded. She hadn't seen him this close in a decade. Would he recognize her? Would he feel it? That strange pull between blood and memory? Then he entered, tall, sharp, untouchable, the kind of man whose presence made the room obey. Everyone bowed. Evelyn lowered her head, hiding her tears behind the brim of her cap. For a second, he paused. His eyes flickered toward her. Something in her stillness caught his attention. A warmth, a shadow of a face he couldn't place. But he brushed it off, because billionaires don't have time for ghosts. Days passed. She watched him from afar, watched him smile for cameras, watched him sign deals worth billions, watched him walk past her every single day without knowing the truth. But fate is patient, and fate always finds its way. One rainy evening, when the mansion fell silent, Evelyn found herself standing outside Alexander's office. Through the half-open door, she saw him arguing on the phone, anger trembling in his voice. "Don't talk to me about family," he said, slamming the table. "I don't have one." Those words sliced through her like glass. Her knees weakened. She bit her lip, muffling a sob. Family. He didn't even know he had one. Later that night, she returned to her tiny servant's room. Bare walls, cracked mirror, one old wooden chest. She opened it slowly, and there it was, a photograph. A young woman in a blue dress, holding a baby wrapped in white silk. Her smile radiant, his eyes just like Alexander's. She pressed the picture to her heart. "I kept you alive, my boy, even when the world forgot me." Tears spilled, but she smiled, because even pain, when born of love, feels sacred. But destiny was whispering again. The next morning, something strange happened. Alexander had called all the staff to the main hall. His voice thundered through the air. "There's been a theft. A priceless family heirloom is missing." Whispers spread. Eyes darted. And when suspicion turned to Evelyn, The room froze. A guard pulled her forward. An old woman trembling, clutching her apron. Her heart raced, confusion flooding her soul. I don't know anything, sir, she whispered. But no one listened, not even him. Alexander's gaze was cold, distant. Search your quarters, he ordered. And when they did, the heirloom, a golden locket engraved with the Grace family crest, was found beneath her bed. Gasps filled the room. Evelyn's world collapsed. Her knees hit the floor. Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. No, that's not mine. I would never. But the words fell on deaf ears. The staff murmured. The judgment was quick. Fire her, Alexander said, before I call the police. The room fell silent. For the first time, Evelyn looked straight into her son's eyes. Eyes that once looked up at her with love, now stared down with disgust. She wanted to scream the truth, to tell him everything. But her lips trembled, frozen in fear. Would he even believe her? Or would he think it's just another lie from a desperate woman? As the guards led her away, the world seemed to fade. Memories flashed before her eyes. A baby's laughter, a mother's lullaby, a promise whispered in the dark. I'll always protect you. Later that night, alone in the rain-soaked alley behind the mansion, Evelyn sat shivering, clutching that old photograph to her chest. Lightning split the sky. Thunder roared. And somewhere inside the mansion, Alexander sat at his desk, staring at the same golden locket, the one he thought she had stolen. He opened it slowly, and inside, a picture of himself as a baby, held by a young woman, wearing the same blue dress Evelyn once wore. His breath caught. His fingers trembled. A strange ache filled his chest, one he couldn't explain. Who was she? Why did the old maid have this? And why did her eyes feel so painfully familiar? He rose from his chair, the storm raging outside mirroring the storm within him. Something told him he'd made a terrible mistake, but it was already too late. She was gone. Or was she? Because as dawn broke, a voice echoed through the hallway, weak, trembling, but filled with fire. Mr. Grace, before you throw away what's left of your soul, there's something you need to know. The guards froze. Alexander turned, and when he saw her standing there, soaked, pale, eyes blazing with truth, time itself seemed to stop. Alexander's breath caught in his throat. For a heartbeat, he couldn't move. The woman standing before him looked fragile, broken, yet there was something fierce behind her trembling eyes. The same fire he used to see in his own reflection. Rainwater dripped from her gray hair onto the marble floor, but she didn't flinch. The guards waited for his command, but he raised a hand. "Leave us," he said quietly. When they were gone, silence filled the hall. Only the ticking of the grand clock echoed between them. Slow, cold, and merciless. She stepped forward, each footstep echoing like thunder in his chest. "I didn't steal your locket," she whispered. "I never would." Her voice shook, but her words carried something ancient, truth wrapped in pain. Alexander stared at her, jaw clenched. "Then explain," he said sharply. "How did you have that picture? Who was the woman in it?" Her eyes filled with tears. "That woman was me." He froze. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. "What?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out the torn half of another photo. The same picture that was inside the locket, only this time, the edges matched perfectly. She held it out with trembling hands. "I kept this for 30 years, she said softly, "because it's the only piece of my son I had left." He didn't take it. He couldn't. His mind refused to believe what his eyes were seeing. "This is impossible," he muttered. "My mother died when I was a child. My father told me." "Your father lied." The words cut through him like glass. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried the weight of decades of silence. "He told you I was gone because he wanted to erase me. He wanted to bury the truth, because I found out what he did." Alexander's breath grew shallow. "What are you talking about?" She took a step closer. "Your father wasn't the man you think he was. He built his fortune on deceit, on other people's suffering, on betrayal." Her words shook as she spoke. I found out he was laundering money through charities, stealing from the poor to feed his pride. I tried to stop him, Alexander. I tried to save you from his corruption, but he turned everyone against me. He stared at her, silent, trying to piece together fragments of memories long buried. A woman's laughter, the scent of lavender, a lullaby in the dark, then screaming, fire, and a car speeding away. Something inside him cracked. "You're saying my father lied about your death?" he whispered. She nodded, tears sliding down her weathered cheeks. "He told you I was gone, but I never stopped looking for you. When I couldn't reach you, I stayed close, in any way I could. That's why I took the job here, to see you even from a distance." Her voice broke. "I've been cleaning your floors for 10 years, Alexander, watching you grow colder, lonelier, watching my son become everything his father wanted, and nothing I raised you to be." Alexander's throat tightened. He turned away, pacing, hands shaking. "No, this can't be real," he murmured. "I would have known. I would have felt it." "You did," she said softly. "You just didn't listen." He stopped. Those words hit him deep. Memories flooded back. How every time she passed him in the hall, he felt an ache he couldn't name. The strange comfort in her presence, the warmth in her silence. And now it all made sense. His knees went weak. He sank into the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. For the first time in years, Alexander Grace, billionaire, tycoon, empire builder, felt like a child again. But Evelyn didn't move closer. She just stood there, quiet and trembling. "I never wanted to destroy your life," she whispered. "I only want to see if you were happy." He lifted his head slowly, eyes red, confusion and anger mixing in his chest. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why let me believe you were dead? Why live like this, like a servant?" She smiled faintly, sadness curling her lips. "Because I wanted to see who you become without my name protecting you. And because I was afraid that you'd hate me like your father did." Alexander's jaw tightened. "I don't know what to believe," he said. "My father, he wasn't perfect, but he gave me everything." She nodded. "Yes, he gave you the world but took away your heart." Her words hung heavy between them. Outside, thunder rolled again. Inside, truth cracked the walls like lightning. Then the door burst open. One of the guards rushed in, panting. "Sir, we found something. You need to see this." Alexander rose abruptly, still trembling. The guard handed him a small black envelope, slick with rain. No name, no seal, just a faint scent of old perfume, lavender. He tore it open. Inside were several documents, bank transfers, deeds, letters, all signed by his father's name. But one page caught his eye, an old legal statement, dated 30 years ago. It read, "Asterisk custody of minor, Alexander Grace, transferred to Richard Grace. Biological mother declared mentally unfit. Asterisk. Below that, his father's forged signature, and a doctor's stamp from a hospital that closed 2 decades ago." His vision blurred. His father's betrayal stared him in the face, black and white, cold and merciless. Evelyn watched quietly, her hands clutching her apron. She didn't need to speak. He could see it all now. The empire he ruled was built on lies, and the woman he cast out into the rain was the only honest soul left in his bloodline. His voice cracked. "All these years you lived like this, alone, humiliated, because of him." Her eyes glistened. "I didn't need the world, Alexander. I only needed you to remember me." He turned away, his heart pounding. Memories clawed their way back. His mother's face, her lullaby, the way she held his hand when he was afraid of thunder. And suddenly, he wasn't the billionaire anymore. He was just a boy lost in time. Then, without warning, he slammed his fist on the desk. "I need the truth, all of it." Evelyn flinched, but nodded. "There's more," she said softly. "Your father's secrets go deeper than you think. The theft, the false accusations, they were never about me. Someone else wanted you to hate me." Alexander frowned. "What do you mean?" Her gaze shifted toward the grand staircase. "The one who planted the locket under my bed. He works for someone in your company. Someone who doesn't want you to know who you truly are. He stiffened. Who? She hesitated. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't bring herself to speak the name. Instead, she whispered, You have enemies in your own house, my son. They fear what happens once you know the truth. Before he could reply, the lights flickered. A sudden gust of wind blew through the open window, scattering papers across the floor. And then a gunshot. The sound ripped through the hall. Evelyn screamed. Alexander spun around, searching for the source. Smoke curled near the doorway. One of the guards was down, bleeding. Another man in a dark coat stood at the entrance, his face shadowed, a gun in hand. Alexander's blood ran cold. He knew that silhouette, that stance, that calm. Hello, son, the man said, stepping forward. Rain dripped from his coat, his voice chillingly familiar. Alexander's breath stopped. It couldn't be. His father had been dead for years, or so he'd been told. Evelyn gasped, her body shaking. No, it can't be. The man smirked, lowering his weapon. Surprised to see me alive? You shouldn't be. The dead don't die when there's money to protect. Alexander's mind spun. You're supposed to be gone. We buried you. His father laughed softly. You buried what I wanted you to. A name, a mask, but the man behind it never left. Evelyn clutched her chest, whispering, Richard, what have you done? He looked at her, coldly amused. What I always do, Evelyn, survive. Alexander took a step forward, fury rising in his chest. All these years you lied to me. You made me hate her. Richard's smile faded. His eyes turned hard. You were weak. You needed hate to make you strong. Look at you now. Powerful, feared, untouchable. You should be thanking me. But Alexander's hands were shaking. He glanced at his mother, then back at the man who had destroyed them both. No, he said, voice low. You didn't make me strong. You made me empty. Richard chuckled darkly. Then maybe it's time to fill that emptiness with the truth. He raised the gun again. Because the truth, my son, isn't what you think. The storm outside roared louder, lightning flashing through the glass. Evelyn's eyes widened in horror as Richard took another step closer. And just as he opened his mouth to speak, the mansion doors exploded open behind him. A group of men in black rushed in, shouting orders. Guns drawn, flashlights blazing. Alexander froze. Evelyn screamed. Richard turned slowly, his smirk fading as red laser dots danced across his chest. Put it down, someone shouted, but he didn't. Instead, he looked straight at Alexander, calm, fearless, and whispered the words that shattered his son's world. You were never my blood. And then he pulled the trigger. The gunfire echoed through the mansion like thunder. But what happened next changed everything. The gunshot tore through the air like lightning splitting the heavens. Evelyn screamed as the world slowed. Her frail hands reached forward, her heart pounding with one thought, asterisk not again star. The bullet never hit Alexander. At the last moment, Evelyn threw herself in front of him. The sound echoed through the marble hall. And then silence. She fell into his arms, blood staining her pale dress. Her lips trembled, her eyes glistening with the softest love. Alexander's world collapsed. Mother! No, no, stay with me. His voice broke, shattering into pieces. He pressed his hand against her wound, trembling. You can't leave me. Not now, not when I just found you. Her breath came in fragile waves. She touched his cheek with shaking hand. My boy, my sweet boy. Her fingers brushed away his tears like she used to when he was a child. You were always meant for more than a shadow. He looked down at her, eyes wild with pain. You saved me. Why? She smiled faintly. Because love never stops protecting, even when the world does. Her eyes fluttered closed for a second, then opened again, as if fighting to stay in this world just a little longer. Behind them, chaos roared. Agents yelling, footsteps rushing, the thunder outside growing wilder. Richard stood frozen, his gun trembling now, his face pale as if seeing a ghost. "Evelyn," he whispered, his voice hollow. He took a step forward, but Alexander looked up, and for the first time, the son's eyes burned with the fury of truth. "Don't you dare," he hissed. "You've taken enough." Richard hesitated. For a moment, his mask cracked. He saw what he had created: a broken woman, a shattered son, and an empire built on lies. He dropped the gun. It clattered to the marble, echoing like a final confession. The agent stormed in, shouting commands. Richard raised his hands, but his eyes stayed locked on Evelyn. "I never wanted this," he murmured. But the words were too late, too small to touch the truth. As they cuffed him, he looked at his son. "You'll understand one day. Power isn't built on love." Alexander glared at him, his voice quiet but sharp as glass. "No, real power is love, and you'll die never knowing it." They dragged Richard away as the rain poured harder, each drop hammering against the windows like tears from the sky. Evelyn's breathing grew weaker. Her head rested against Alexander's shoulder, and he held her tighter, rocking gently as if time could be reversed by touch. "Please, hold on," he whispered. "I'll get help." She shook her head slowly. "No, my love, don't waste your strength on me. Promise me, promise you'll live differently." He choked back tears. "I promise. I'll make it right. I'll rebuild everything you lost." She smiled through the pain. "That's all I ever wanted." Then, softly, she whispered something only he could hear. A lullaby, the same melody she used to hum when he was small. The sound broke him completely. Her voice faded like mist, but her warmth lingered long after her last breath. The moment she stilled, the storm outside began to fade, as if the heavens themselves bowed in silence. The next morning, the mansion was no longer a palace. It was a tomb of memories. But in its hollow heart, something new had awakened: truth. Alexander buried his mother beneath the old oak tree on the hill, the place she used to take him when the world was kind. The tree's roots reached deep into the earth, and as the sun broke through the clouds, light spilled across her grave like a blessing. He stood there for hours, unmoving. The wind whispered her name. Birds began to sing. And for the first time, Alexander Grace, the man who once owned everything, felt truly human. Days turned into weeks. The news spread like wildfire. Billionaire's father found alive, arrested for decades of fraud and murder. The empire trembled, but Alexander didn't fight to save it. He let it fall, brick by brick, secret by secret. He sold the mansion. He gave half his fortune to the same charities his father had robbed. And with what remained, he built something new, the Evelyn Grace Foundation. Its mission: to give homes, hope, and dignity to the forgotten. Every building carried her name. Every life it touched whispered her story. The world called him a hero, but Alexander knew better. He was just a son trying to make amends for the sins that weren't his. One evening, months later, he returned to the hill where his mother rested. The sky was painted gold and crimson. He sat by the grave, silent, his fingers tracing her name carved into stone. "I did it, Mother," he whispered. "I built something that breathes kindness again." A gentle wind brushed through the grass, and for a moment he thought he heard her voice. Soft, warm, filled with pride. He smiled faintly. "I wish you could see it." Then his phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. Asterisk, "Sir, the final document's ready for signature. Are you sure about transferring ownership?" Asterisk. He stared at it for a long time. Then he typed back, asterisk, "Yes. It belongs to them now, not to me." Asterisk. He slipped the phone into his coat, took one last look at the sky, and walked down the hill, the wind carrying her lullaby behind him. Years passed. The world changed. And the story of Evelyn Grace, the poor old maid who was the mother of a billionaire, became a legend whispered in schools, homes, and hearts. People said her love rebuilt a kingdom. Others said her sacrifice turned greed into grace. But those who truly understood knew the truth. It wasn't about riches lost or empires built. It was about a love that refused to die. One quiet night, decades later, a young woman stood before the same oak tree. She placed a bouquet of white lilies on the grave and looked up at the stars. Her name was Clara Grace, Alexander's daughter, the heir to a name no longer tied to corruption but to compassion. She spoke softly into the night. "Grandmother, I never met you, but I live every day because of you." The leaves rustled gently, and a faint breeze wrapped around her like an embrace. She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Father says you taught him that love is the only wealth that grows when shared. I'll never forget that." She turned to leave, but as she did, a single feather drifted down from the tree, white as snow, landing softly at her feet. She picked it up and looked to the sky. The moon shone bright, and for a moment she swore she saw a shadow in the light, a woman in a blue dress, smiling softly before fading into the stars. Clara whispered, "Rest easy, grandmother. Your story still lives." And somewhere beyond the clouds, Evelyn Grace's soul smiled, watching her son and granddaughter carry the light she left behind. Because love, real love, never dies with the body. It lingers in every act of kindness, in every tear turned into strength, in every empire rebuilt with compassion. The mansion that once echoed with lies was now a school filled with laughter. The name Grace, once tainted by greed, became a symbol of redemption. And though Evelyn's body lay beneath the earth, her heart beat in every life she touched, a rhythm of mercy, forgiveness, and courage. Years later, at the Foundation's annual gala, a large portrait of Evelyn hung at the center stage. The woman once mocked as the poor old maid, now honored as a mother who changed the course of generations. Alexander, now gray and gentle, stood before it, his eyes soft. Reporters crowded, cameras flashed, but he didn't speak to them. Instead, he whispered to the portrait, "Everything I am is because of you." A single tear rolled down his cheek, but it wasn't sorrow. It was gratitude. The crowd fell silent as he lifted his glass. To the woman who proved love is the greatest legacy. Applause thundered. The lights glowed golden. And for a brief, eternal second, Alexander swore he saw her standing among the crowd, smiling, radiant, proud. Because, in the end, it wasn't the wealth or the empire or the bloodline that defined the Grace family. It was a mother's love that refused to be forgotten. And though time carried them all into dust, her story whispered on the wind, in every heart that ever felt unseen, in every soul that ever believed redemption was too far gone. Evelyn Grace had become more than a name. She had become a truth, a legend, a promise that echoes through eternity, that even in a world built on greed and power, one mother's love can still change everything.